Everywhere I go, people keep mentioning the name Cosmo Sheldrake to me. Sam Lee did it first, and then I heard him, Cosmo I mean, playing away in the background of Sam Lee's extraordinary live-stream Nightingales event. And then Johnny Flynn, when we went walking with him, said, "You must meet Cosmo Sheldrake." And the reason they wanted us to meet him was because he is a man who loves the natural world and engages with it and records it and uses it in making his music. And he is a multi-instrumentalist, a composer and a producer. And we're going to go for a walk with him in the woods near his home.
So around here? Cool. Just gonna grab. Actually, I might maybe need a hand with the ironing board. I'll check first, I might be all right.
I might just ask what you're doing, Cosmo. Good
Sure.
morning. Good morning. You seem to have an ironing board
I
in
do,
this shed.
Yeah. I do, yeah, I'm just
Is this your studio?
This is, yeah.
You're kindly going to move your ironing board and your keyboards out into the wood just around the corner here.
Exactly, yeah.
Fantastic. Do you want me to give you a hand with the keyboard?
Potentially, I'm just going to untangle a few things here, and then actually, yeah, one thing you could do.
So are you used to setting things up in the outdoors? I mean, is this something that you do the whole time?
Quite often, yeah. It's I'm actually very used to it. Well, I'm fortunate enough to be able to sort of power all my stuff from batteries and be able to kind of move it around.
So what have you got on the ironing board here?
So I have a loop pedal, a little mixer, and then a couple of MIDI keyboards and buttons and knobs, and then a audio interface, a sound card.
And then the keyboard that I brought out.
And then I'm going to set that up on another little thing next to me, and then I'll have my computer and then a little microphone.
Fantastic.
That'll be everything.
And I've heard that you do gigs sometimes to places as well as to people.
Yeah, I quite like the idea of trying to reintegrate, especially because a lot of the music I'm about to play is recordings of birdsong, a lot of which were taken from around here. So reintegrating the recordings back with the places which they came from, which I think is quite a satisfying thing to do.
There's a sort of interesting juxtaposition, isn't there, between all this electronic equipment and then the natural sounds. Mm-hmm. Why does it intrigue you so much to put those two things together?
There's a concept that Stephen Feld, who's this anthropologist and ethnomusicologist, he talks about schizophonia, which is separating of sounds from their sources, which basically is what happens when you record a sound and digitally reproduce it elsewhere. And I think, despite the fact that there's loads of electronic equipment, in a way it's an attempt to kind of get over that, trying to then take that sound that's been separated and then kind of reintegrate it afterwards. Is sometimes, in order to do that, you need speakers in order to be able to then play them back in that place. So, also, it's just in this modern era, it's just one of the ways I've found of being able to kind of get what's inside of my head out without the use of many other people and expensive recording equipment.
So what are you going to play?
I think I'm going to just improvise using some recordings of endangered birds.
That was so wonderful, and it was like, here we are on this December day with leaden skies, and actually the birds are really quiet here, but you suddenly conjured up the spring, you know, with all that bird song. It's beautiful. How did you record all those birds?
I mean, a lot of them, some of the robins and stuff that were in there were from around here, and some were from archives as well, and some were licensed from different people and different. So I didn't record absolutely every one of them, but then the nightingale I recorded actually in Sam Lee's Singing with Nightingale event. I think this is all from Kent. Let me just turn that. So this is all one nightingale, but just different extracts of the nightingale, and then it's kind of each extract will maybe exist over a period of 5 notes or. And then at a certain point, a different part of the song will come in. And then it kind of... Essentially then when you kind of play a big... You get the kind of chorus effect, or like a kind of prepared piano or choir of Nightingale.
So you can play the Nightingale song and change the Nightingale song through your keyboard.
Yeah, essentially. So you can, different intervals or different places up on the keyboard. There's different qualities of the sound, different rhythmic kind of extracts. So yeah, you can. It gives it a bit of variation, so it's not just one small note then sped up and slowed down across the keyboard. So.
And you made an album called Wake Up Calls, which is very much in this mode, isn't it? Each track featuring a different endangered species, bird species from the United Kingdom. Why did you want to do that?
Well, I mean, a number of reasons. Apart from anything else, I love bird song, and it was just it. I was moved to make music out of bird song. But also, I think there's a fish ecologist who's been really inspiring to me. Who's been doing this work called Steve Simpson. And he's done this work in Indonesia where he takes recordings of healthy coral reefs and he plays them to degraded reefs. And the sound of the healthy reef encourages the fish to return and then start grazing the algae again and then bring the reef back into more of a balanced, healthy state. So
sound is having an impact on regeneration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't think there's an equivalent necessarily or a direct equivalent in birds. But one time I was playing some cuckoo sounds up in the woods up there, and this is early May, and a few days later, there was a cuckoo singing right up there. And so I'm not claiming that it was called in as it was migrating along and just heard a song and landed, but I think, I don't know, I'm aware of the fact that if humans are more conscious about the way that they contribute and engage with the sound environments that we're in, rather than just this kind of mindless, unconscious pollution that's all too often the case, then I think you can engage in a kind of dialogue or kind of interspecies. I don't know what.
You mentioned fish. Do you have any fish music that you could share with us?
Yes, I do, yeah. So I've got some of the recordings of that Steve Simpson's, of some of his coral reefs that I mentioned just a while ago, and some blue whales and some longhorn sculpins and some oyster parrotfish and some bucktooth parrotfish and oyster toadfish. So that's an oyster toadfish on the kick drum there, and then this is a bucktooth parrotfish.
Wow.
And they're fish that live in coral reefs. So again, it was kind of making music from a reef environment and fish that inhabit the reef.
And this is a less gentle environment, obviously. This is a powerful, quite aggressive sound.
Yeah, well, they basically make the sounds by forcing water out of their swim bladders. So this is the sound of a oyster toadfish forcing water out of its bladder. And then this is the bucktooth parrotfish, which goes around crunching coral reef with its beak. And then the longhorn sculpin, this is just a little extract of, it does sound like a horn, it's this kind of, and then I just took one little bit of it and, so that's the longhorn sculpin, and then this blue whale here.
That's kind of got a melancholy tinge to it.
Certainly does, yeah. And then this is a humpback. There's actually 3 humpbacks. There's one there, and then I've got 2 more, and these faders here, so I can kind of slide in. Kind of choir of humpbacks.
Something primeval about it, and yet so contemporary, so current as well. That's what's so extraordinary. It plays with your perceptions, because you're hearing these sounds of nature, but you're hearing them in a very electronic way.
they have so much charisma and character and personality in the sounds, you know. So it's very satisfying to be able to work with something that's already gives so much, rather than starting from a kind of blank slate in a studio with a synthesizer and a sine wave. So for me, it's much more rewarding working with these kinds of sounds.
You mentioned the Nightingales earlier, and I think in that Sam Lee Nightingales event, you were improvising live with the Nightingale.
Yeah.
What's that experience like?
Well, just extraordinary, really. It's I mean, just apart from anything else, how they seem so just curious and up for it, and you know, they can be 5 feet away from you, just going for it. And then I was improvising with other nighttime singing birds, not using nightingales because I didn't want to completely bamboozle them. And as a lot of that song is territorial.
So you were playing birdsong to the Nightingale?
Playing birdsong to the Nightingale, but mainly owls and robins and missel thrushes and other things that sing at nighttime, but things that wouldn't chase it out or make it aggressive towards me or anything.
And did you get the sense that it responded to what you were doing?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, I think birds are particularly birds like blackbirds, they're call and response kind of creatures. And I've noticed, certainly playing sounds of blackbirds in the woods and stuff, that particular motifs that in the recordings I'm using will then be picked up and then echoed around by other blackbirds. And I think it's the same with nightingales as well. There's you get the sense that they respond very much to the musical phrases you're using, and I was as much as possible trying to respond to their song as well. So, I mean, it definitely felt like something was happening in between us. It wasn't just me, sort of, you know, trying to play along.
Could it be, do you think, that birdsong will change as a result of what you're doing, that you're actually sending out there new motifs that birds are picking up on and that could go into their language?
Well, I mean, I don't doubt it. There's some striking examples of this in Australia, where lyrebirds, you know, those famous imitating birds, that they found lyrebirds that had snatches of long extinct indigenous languages. You know, that birds were actually documenting extinct human culture rather than humans documenting extinct birds. And I think there's famous examples of the same thing in the Amazon. Alexander von Humboldt actually transcribed some birds. I think it was a parrot or something that had learnt some indigenous languages, and there's some transcriptions in one of his journals of these birds speaking human. And so, I mean, language is very much a socially acquired thing. If you raise a blackbird in isolation, not socially with its peers and stuff, it will sing a very stunted, much more restricted song.
Would you like to go for a walk?
Let's do it. Let's go down now.
Okay. Cosmo, where are we?
So we're in Boulsbury Wood, which is a wood kind of straddling the border between Hampshire and Dorset. But we're technically in Hampshire.
And we're very close to the New Forest here, aren't we?
Very, yeah.
I drove up through there, not doffing my cap to the ponies as I came.
It's fun, isn't it?
And what kind of a wood is this?
Well, it's a mixture of plantation. There's Douglas fir and larch plantation, and then this is kind of an old coppice wood here, and then it goes over the hill, and then it leads down through a kind of another larch plantation into this big beech plantation, and then up that way there's lots of old, just really ancient oak and mixed kind of old deciduous woodland.
And I wonder if you come out here and listen.
Certainly, yeah. Since lockdown, it's become a kind of meditation practice. In some ways, I became really interested in just trying to listen to everything at once, which I think when you're listening to a dawn chorus or an evening chorus or something like that, there's almost no way of focusing in on any individual. It becomes almost impossible. And I think so much of the time when we listen, we're trying to listen to make out that specific sound against the backdrop of everything else. And it's very rare to actually just try and listen to everything all at once. And through doing so, you just become so aware of that crazy polyphonic just nature of everything. The way we hear the world is sounds coming from every single place at every single time. I did some work with this amazing kind of bird language person and tracker man in America called John Young, and he talks about how if anything happens in the forest, the birds respond almost like ripples in a pond. You know, a rock falls in a pond, ripples go out, and he'd be able to tell if a particular kind of alarm call sound started happening.
So if a predator's coming or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. But he'd be able to tell you that there's a red-tailed hawk coming from that direction. It'll be here in 3 minutes. Because, or if the predator was ground-based or flying, or just by the particular nature of the texture of the kind of alarm call. And again, that's these ripples that you listen to the response of everything at once. Again, just anything that moves, it kind of sends a movement out. So yeah, that's one of the things that I've been trying to do, or as I listen to things, is just trying to generalise my focus.
And has music always been a part of your life? Was it something that was in your family life when you were young?
Yeah, so I mean, my dad is a piano player and an organist, and then he comes from a line of organists as well. So
and he's quite a well-known person, isn't he, your dad?
Yeah, I guess he's a biologist, and sometimes can be reasonably controversial.
A controversialist,
yeah.
Yes, in the scientific community.
Yeah.
Rupert Sheldrake.
Yeah.
And what about your mum? There's music there, isn't there?
Yeah, so my mum, Jill Peirce, she teaches Mongolian overtone chanting as a kind of meditational practice.
Hang on, what is Mongolian overtone chanting?
It's when you sing the harmonics, you amplify the harmonics. So you'll sing a fundamental note and then you'll sort of slightly constrict your throat and you'll amplify the harmonics above it. So you hear these kind of bell-like flute tones moving above the fundamental.
Right. Can you do that?
A bit. I mean, I can a tiny bit.
Could you demonstrate it?
I can try, yeah.
That's wonderful. What are you doing with your throat muscles when you do that?
You kind of squash the back of your throat. You kind of put pressure on it, kind of tighten it up, and then essentially it's just the vowel shapes. You cycle through the vowel shapes, and each vowel shape kind of amplifies a particular harmonic that's present in the fundamental, but normally just kind of disguised.
So I'm thinking of a kind of cacophony in the house with your father playing the organ or the piano and your mother with her chanting workshops. Was that what you experienced as a young boy?
Yeah, and there's always very bizarre sounds coming from her workshops, and then also when she was in the 70s, she did quite a lot of work with Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, who's one of the sort of inventors of electronic music as we know it now, and so there was also this kind of current of experimental electronic. There's all his scores kind of all over the walls, and
because the scores are not conventional scores, are they?
Absolutely not.
Score.
No, they're kind of like works of art. I mean, they're extraordinary to look at.
So what effect did it have on you growing up with all this, well, not just music, but really inventive and mould-breaking music going on in the house?
Well, I mean, I guess in lots of ways it was, I mean, my dad mainly plays Bach, so most of the music was basically being bathed in the sound of Bach, and then, but I grew up, I mean, I when I was 7 I started playing boogie-woogie and jazz and sort of blues piano, and my teacher was obsessed with New Orleans music, so I became rapidly obsessed with Dr. John and Professor Longhair, and I also learned completely by ear, so I still can't read or write music.
And I gather you play a lot of different instruments. You've brought the guitar with you now, but I mean, I read that you play 30 instruments. I'm
one of those things. It's like the internet is one of those echo chambers. I don't remember ever actually saying that to anyone. But
is it true?
I mean, I collect instruments. So I've got a lot of different kinds, and I mean, to varying degrees. I wouldn't be able to hold my own in a jam on many of them. But for the purposes of recording and writing simple parts and stuff, then I don't know. It depends if you count.
You've got a sousaphone.
I have a sousaphone.
Yeah, come on, let's try and list some of them. What else do you play?
I have a sousaphone. I've got bass clarinet. I have a trombone. The piano, the drums, the double bass, guitar, banjo, fiddle.
Penny whistle.
Penny whistle, duduk.
What's a duduk?
It's like an Armenian double-reeded Kind of, it sounds like a clarinet, but that double-reeded instrument made out of apricot wood. And then all sorts of sort of obscure percussion instruments and didgeridoo and then
You've got some bones, you said, with you as
yeah,
well.
and then some bones. I mean, lots of odds and ends that I'll learn, kind of bits and bobs. I have a koto, and I have
A koto?
What's one of those kind of South Asian harp-like instruments that you play, that you can kind of long tabletop, kind of like that kind of sound.
And what about singing? Where does singing fit into the repertoire? Is that just another instrument as far as you're concerned?
In lots of ways, yeah, I do consider singing to be a kind of instrument. I became really interested in and inspired by kind of vocal improvising as a tool, as a way of working with groups as well. I did quite a lot of facilitation work, working with young people and on these youth camps in Canada and America. Lay your head where my heart used to be. Hold the earth above me. Lay down in the green grass. Remember when you loved me. Come closer, don't be shy. Stand beneath the rainy skies. The moon is over the rise. Think of me as the train goes by. Clear the thistles and brambles. Whistle, didn't he ramble? Now there's a bubble of me, and it's floating in thee. God took the stars and he tossed them. Can't tell the birds from the blossom. You'll never be free of me. He'll make a tree from me. Stand in the shade of me. Things are now made of me. The weather vane will say it smells like rain today. Describe the skies to me. Describe the skies to me. So when the sky's full, mark my words, we'll catch a mockingbird.
But beatboxing is another technique that you've used.
So yeah, I'm at these youth camps. A good friend of mine and a big musical mentor figure in my life called Rupinder Singh Sadhu taught me how to beatbox when I was about 14. I never got down the rabbit hole of all that crazy technique into the beatbox world champions and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it was just a way of making percussion sounds or using the body and the voice as a kind of percussion instrument.
Can you show us?
That's what it is.
Fantastic. and when you were learning that, tell us about your teacher and what sort of advice he gave you.
Let's think. I mean, you have all these things like these phrases like boots and cats and boots and or born to be clever, too clever to be too clever, or these things that kind of help your mouth get round where you need to emphasize the certain things. And then after that, it's just it just catches if it catches. And then I just walked around for years just doing nothing else, and just everywhere I went, I just sort of make a beat just to kind of walk to.
This is called Folk on Foot. So I'm interested in whether folk music has played a part in your sort of multifaceted musical journey.
Very much so, yeah. I think in and around the time I started learning the guitar, I was about 17 when I started playing the guitar, and then the next thing I picked up was the banjo. We spent quite a lot of time in America and worked with these people who used a lot of kind of bluegrass or American folk tradition as part of their kind of John Young with this bird language stuff. He was an amazing musician and would bring together an amazing band of people. So I got into playing banjo and this kind of bluegrass tradition and this Appalachian kind of old-time folk tradition. And then through that, kind of discovered that a lot of those songs were actually English folk songs that had wended their way over and somehow been preserved in the Appalachian Mountains in a more true state sometimes to how they'd been, discovered and rediscovered in England. And so I kind of found my way back into English folk music from American folk music, and particularly from this kind of old-time Appalachian, kind of very raw ballad tradition, and that kind of modal, kind of unaccompanied singing that I particularly love.
And who were you listening to at that time?
Well, my way in was also through kind of Pete Seeger's. He has one particular record which is much rawer and less happy than some of his other ones, and it's just a lot of these really dark kind of ballads. And then I got into some of those kind of early American, the anthology of American folk music and Smithsonian archive stuff, and then people like Anne Briggs and Joan Baez and then Shirley Collins and then also got quite into the song collecting angle and thinking about trying to trace these songs and where, how they grew and evolved and transformed as they were moved across different places and landscapes and times. And then sort of around that time met Sam Lee or re-met Sam Lee, I should say, and then kind of suddenly became aware of this, what he was up to. So then it kind of opened up and diversified and then I started just weaving more folk music into my brother and I, who's an accordion player, we sort of have a little repertoire of songs that we sing together, and so it kind of trickled through into it in quite a big way.
I wonder if you'd maybe sing a folk song for us here in the wood, because we've stopped now in a big clearing, and there's a ladder for climbing up the tree there. Mm-hmm. Do you think you might like to perch on that and sing for us?
Absolutely, yeah.
What are you going to sing?
Climb up the ladder. I'm going to sing a song. It's actually a sacred harp song. It's a hymn of the sacred harp tradition, which is this beautiful kind of harmony singing it originated in England, but then kind of blossomed in the States and the kind of East Coast. And it's just this beautiful kind of modal, simple way of getting big groups of people to sing in harmonies. But obviously there's only one of me, but I'll sing. It's called Barnet. For some reason it's called Barnet, Sacred Harp Song, but I'll climb up there and sing the song.
And the sound here will be rather interesting, won't it?
So we're standing in a beautiful kind of beech plantation, a big beech grove, and all the beech trees are around a similar age and it's quite wide and open, so it has this beautiful kind of reverberant echo or reverb sound here. So hopefully I'm going to sing it and we'll record it from a little distance just so you can kind of experience the woods. Peaceful be in silent slumber, peaceful in the great sorrow. Thou no more shalt join our number, thou no more our songs will know. Yet again we hope to greet thee, when the days of life have fled, then in heaven once more to greet thee. When no farewell tear is shed. Peaceful be in silent slumber, peaceful in great sorrow. Thou no more shalt join our number, thou no more our songs will know. Yet again we hope to greet thee. When the days of life have fled, then in heaven once more to meet thee. When no farewell tear is shed.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And the reverberation here is so wonderful, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah.
So how does it feel standing up there singing it?
Great. Yeah, really good.
King of the castle.
Yeah.
Well, if you come down, we can carry on with our walk.
Sounds good.
But I think it's a first for folk on foot. It's the first time that somebody's climbed halfway up a tree in order to sing a song for us. So thank you very much, Cosmo. So we're recording actually with 3 different microphones here. There's one that you've got very close up on your clothes. There's another one which Natalie is holding over here. And then we put one on the stand just at the other side of the clearing. Why do you think that's going to make a difference to the way we record?
Well, for me, I've been interested in a while just for trying to capture the sounds of spaces, and that's something that I got into it actually when I was field recording in Canada, and these ravens make this particular kind of bell sound. They go, "Took," and you just hear that kind of reverberate through the natural kind of forest reverb, and it's just such a beautiful kind of creamy reverberance. And then just because of the fact that all these trees are around a similar age and there's this big kind of wide open space, I think there's a particularly nice reverberance here. But I kind of got into it because there's this extraordinary recording that someone called Louis Sano made of the Aka pygmy singers from Congo, from the Ituri forest. He has this extraordinary recording of women gathering mushrooms where he's just recording. There's just a microphone, you can't hear anything other than this mad, dense forest kind of environment, crickets, birds. And in the far distance, you start to be able to hear these women kind of enter the earshot. And they're singing to each other as they're walking through the forest, picking mushrooms. And it's this, Bernie Krause is this amazing acoustic ecologist. He talks about how animals evolve to sing or vocalize in particular acoustic niches. So they're not directly competing with each other, whether that's rhythmically or frequency-wise. And everything will leave space for each other. And just like everything's evolved specific physical niches, also acoustic niches. Also, it's quite radical it's like what I was talking about earlier about trying to listen to everything at once. To have the object of the recording be so far in the background that it's not just right up in front of you. It doesn't exist in this artificial kind of quiet space that we like to make in studio environments. To actually capture something in its context where it exists, and also particularly the way that music evolved to also occupy its own space. You know, these people have been singing this kind of music there for so long that the animals and the music has arisen in a similar way to how birds and crickets leave each other's space. The birds also leave the space for the humans also leave the space for the birds. And so I just think it's really nice. I've just been getting more and more into trying to record things, but with the full kind of field of sound where you actually are, the kind of sonic watermark of a microphone will pick up about 50% of the signal coming to the microphone will be just reverberations. And so rather than trying to squeeze those out, just kind of celebrating them, and also just having the focus of the recording be in the background, so to speak. And
I'm very conscious actually that we're here in December, so there are virtually no leaves on the trees. In fact, we've heard the leaves underfoot. Mm-hmm. In April or August, this would sound very different, wouldn't it, this space?
Absolutely. It's full of blackbirds and very much alive and kicking birdsong-wise, yeah.
And the canopy of leaves would make the reverberation sound different too, wouldn't
totally,
it?
Yeah.
Shall we just listen quietly to what we can hear here? Because I think there are sounds in the background too as well.
Mm-hmm.
Dog barking.
Mm-hmm. Amazing how
As
much
well as
human noise there is, isn't there? It's
the intervention of man-made noise comes, the aeroplane, and you can hear cars, can't you? But you could hear quite a few birds, actually. I could hear quite a lot of birds in the distance, possibly some crows or rooks,
Yeah.
I think. And then that dog
Yeah.
yapping away.
Totally.
But it is fascinating, and it is wonderful to stop and listen in a place and just try to orientate yourself by sound.
Also, to do it with microphones is a very different experience, because the human ear is very good at focusing from that field of sound what you're listening to. It's like at a dinner party or in a loud space, you can zoom in on a conversation and block out the rest. But if you've got microphones on, and you've got headphones on, a microphone turned on and headphones on, it's a completely different experience. The microphone turns everything up. It doesn't differentiate. So you hear everything much louder. It becomes much harder to focus. It's actually quite disorientating. You can't tell whether things are coming from which direction. But it's like having massive ears or huge ear trumpets and turning them right up. And it's a very different experience, actually, because you don't have the same ability to discern. You just listen to everything. And yeah, very illuminating. It sort of casts the net much wider than just the normal ear.
And do you feel the urge when you listen to a soundscape like that to start intervening? I mean, because to start making something from it, or to start playing music to it, or do you feel an urge to play with it?
In a weird way, quite the opposite. When I'm recording and got my headphones on, the second I do anything like breathe or snap a twig, or it feels like I kind of got to start from scratch. Even if there's plenty of human noise pollution going on and there's planes and stuff, there's something about just the listening to what's there. And so, I mean, some situations that's not the case at all. Some situations, if I hear a really rusty fan going and I very much want to add something to it or get involved with it. But especially when you're just sitting there with microphones and headphones on, just field recording, it's almost like the practice of trying to get the longest stretch of untouched, just whatever's there, but without me in it, is something that I often feel like I'm trying to aim for. But also, I mean, I very often come and sit right here and put microphones down here, and I've got long cables, so I can run them up here and just put my headphones on and just sing and just improvise and just record it in this reverberance. And I've used bits of that in various tunes I've made. So sometimes I do very much come and just sort of add to it too, but yeah, it depends on the mood, I guess.
So we're emerging into a big open field now from the woods, and the rain's starting.
Yeah, there's a pig farm just over there, which when we're downwind of on the wrong day, it sort of permeates the whole area. Yeah.
Now this looks like a spot for a song.
This is what I was thinking. Yeah. So I was taught to play the bones by an amazing Irish folk singer called Jerry Brady. He lives now in Dublin. He's from Dublin, but he went over to America as a bricklayer and a steeplejack, as a lot of Irish did. And he ended up meeting this person I've mentioned a few times, John Young, and they became firm friends. And he taught Jerry Brady was once standing in a sports bar somewhere in I think it was New York State or New Jersey, where they'd all go after work. And John used to go, and they did some work together, being bricklayers, and Jerry turned to John. He's like, "Do you want to know how to silence the entire pub?" A lot of the people in the pub were Irish, and he started singing this song, "Spancel Hill" with the Bones, and TVs turned off, everyone was silent, and it's just like the whole pub was just full of people just weeping. And he gave John a pair of Bones, and so I was lucky enough to meet Jerry after the first time that John and Jerry were reunited in 30 years or something, and they sang a song on the Bones together. And so Jerry taught me how to play the Bones, and is still very much alive and kicking and going strong. He's in his 80s now, I guess.
And are they actually made of bone?
Yeah, these particular ones are made from cow shins, but traditionally I think they were made from whale bones or also sheep ribs and all sorts of bones. But
and they're used as a percussion instrument. I mean, a bit like the spoons, I suppose some people would recognise.
Yeah, totally. Although Jerry would constantly remind us that the bones are one of the few instruments you can play in a session while maintaining your pint in the other hand.
So you play them in one hand?
So you play them in one hand, unlike the spoons. And they make this kind of clickety-clack. So you kind of clamp the one nearest your thumb into the bottom of your thumb with your middle finger. So that basically stays very still. And then this one is kind of held but more roughly in place. And so when you then essentially kind of move this kind of almost figure of 8 movement where you're offsetting your wrist against your elbow. And if you kind of move that fast enough back and forth, eventually you start to get this kind of clickety clackety clickety clack. And then the next stage is learning how to kind of clamp it, so you just get the clickety clack, clickety clack, clickety clack, clickety clack, clickety clack. So I'm going to sing a song now called My Johnny Was a Shoemaker. My Johnny was a shoemaker, and dearly he loved me. My Johnny was a shoemaker, and now he's gone to sea, with pitch and tar to soil his hands, and to sail across the sea, stormy sea, and sail across the stormy sea. His jacket was a deep sky blue, and curly was his hair. His jacket was a deep sky blue, yes it was, I do declare. And to reef the topsails up against the mast, and to sail across the sea, stormy sea, and sail across the stormy sea. One day he'll be a captain bold with a brave and gallant crew. One day he'll be a captain bold with a sword and spyglass too. And when he has his gallant captain's sword, he'll come home and marry me. Marry me, he'll come home and marry me.
Cosmo, it's been wonderful to hear your music and to experience the lovely beech wood here. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
Cosmo Sheldrake in Boulsbury Wood. Well, there are now more than 40 episodes of Folk on Foot for you to enjoy, so please delve back into the back catalogue if you haven't already heard them. And if you'd like to support us to keep walking, we are entirely dependent on our listeners to keep on the trail. So please become a patron. You'll get great rewards in return for a small monthly contribution that goes towards covering our costs. If you want to sign up for that, go to folkonfoot.com and then click on the Support Us button. We love making Folk on Foot. We hope you enjoy listening to it too.